I'm going to, for this evening's purpose, sidestep the great temptation to discuss 999. Although I was just sharing with Herman that our mutual friend, Sean Hannity's asked us to maybe come spend an hour in this kind of dialogue with him one evening. And I suspect in that setting we might get around to comparing tax notes. But let me talk about Social Security at a couple levels. First of all, like Herman, I'm delighted that Peter Farrar is here. He has written several books on this. He's part of an emerging intellectual revolution that in some ways began with Jose Piñera in Chile, but also began with right here in Texas with the Galveston system, where public employees in Galveston, and in Galveston what they discovered was that you could put in about half as much money and get back twice as big an amount if you did it in the private sector rather than turn it over to the government. So I want to give you three large principles for fundamentally rethinking the system. And I would say this is one of the reasons we're happy to be here. Any candidate who is not prepared to talk about giving younger Americans the right to choose has no serious solution on Social Security. Now, and you can say to everybody who's currently on it, you're fine. It's not going to be touched. Don't let AARP or anybody else lie to you. It is not going to be touched. You're fine. Now, having said that, there are three principles: growth, honesty, and not messing up Social Security by trying to balance the budget on the back of a retirement plan. First of all, growth. You go back to where we were when I left the speakership, which is 4.2% unemployment. Social Security has a lot longer period of being solvent because you just had a lot more people go to work paying the taxes. So don't look at a current static model from the Congressional Budget Office and decide anything. If you looked at 1979-80 under Jimmy Carter, Social Security was going to collapse. You look at the Reagan recovery and the scale of adding new jobs, Social Security got dramatically healthier. It's amazing what 10 or 15 or 20 million extra Americans going to work does to make the country healthier, okay? Second, honesty. And this again is a challenge to the super committee and the current Congress. Lyndon Johnson, in order to score a cheap political point, presented the budget and brought Social Security into the general budget in order to hide the deficit. And that's why Social Security got sucked into the budget. Prior to that, it wasn't part of the budget. It was a freestanding retirement account over here to be solved on its own. Ever since, people have been trying to figure out some way, frankly, to steal the money. The President said it this summer. We're putting in a little YouTube video. You cannot steal this. We're putting in a little YouTube video of Barack Obama twice in July going, I may not be able to send you your Social Security check. Which, I mean, there's $2.4 trillion in the trust fund. What kind of a totally dishonest president does it take to scare senior citizens when, in fact, they don't need to be involved in the debt ceiling? Take it off budget, get it back to being a free, independent retirement account. Third, if you want to solve Social Security in the long run, you go to a system, and we're not very far apart on this, you go to a system where younger Americans, or for that matter, ideologically right-wing Americans at 60 who just have a chip on their shoulder, and are willing to give up the money because they just want to prove a point. I'm thinking about Dick Armey, for example, who would have done it in a heartbeat. I mean, the fact is, you let younger Americans choose. I'm going back to choice. I'm not going to abolish the current system for younger Americans. If you want to stay in the current system, get a smaller return, allow politicians to scare you for 60 years about what they're going to do with your money, not have it as an estate, so if you die early, it doesn't go to your family, and have some politicians say, we're going to have to tell you to work many more years. And by the way, I regard it as not very courageous to say, what we have to do is say to my two grandchildren, Maggie and Robert, who are 12 and 10, you may have to work 3 extra years, 60 years from now. Now, the idea that that's going to somehow significantly change the present is lunacy. If you have your own personal Social Security savings account and you want to retire early on a smaller amount of money because you're willing to have more free time, why would the Congress tell you not to? And on the other hand, if you are like Andy Rooney, who just passed away, having worked until he was 91, and you decide you love what you're doing and you want to stay active, why should the Congress tell you you can't? And so I think let's get politicians out of that decision process, return it to Americans, and let Americans control their own lives.